Oklahoma.
The governor of Oklahoma has declared a state of emergency, and a flash flood emergency is in effect for parts of Missouri. Some scientists say this kind of weather is a sign of climate change. Today, there are marches around the world calling for more research to prevent it. Those drummers are part of the People's Climate March in Washington, D.C., where organizers say 150,000 people are gathered in front of the White House.
The planet is running a fever. There are no emergency rooms for planets.
Democratic Senator Ed Markey of Massachusetts addressing the crowd in D.C. Organizers say tens of thousands are marching in other cities. President Trump is heading to Harrisburg to celebrate his 100th day in office with supporters, and he's skipping what's become a tradition for U.S. presidents.
The White House press corps is holding its annual black tie correspondents' dinner. But the president is bucking tradition and giving that a miss. He's going to be headed to Harrisburg, Pennsylvania, to tour a lawnmower factory and hold a campaign rally, his fourth since taking office. Clearly, he's hoping for that split-screen moment, the press corps that he loves to bash, living it up with fancy dress, and he's out there amongst the people.
ABC's David Wright in Washington. The Pentagon says a U.S. soldier was killed by an explosive device near Mosul. You're listening to ABC News.
Hiring is the most challenging part of my job. It's really hard. The searching, the sorting through resumes. Most people don't have the right experience.
We started using ZipRecruiter about 3 months ago. Right from the start, you could tell it was going to make hiring a lot easier. One click and my job was posted to 100+ job boards, all the top sites.
All of the candidates came to my dashboard, and it's easy to compare them. Thumbs up if I liked them, thumbs down if I didn't. No emails and attachments, printing up docs, phone calls, none of that.
And I couldn't believe the number of great applicants we got. I had the person we needed within 1 week. I don't know how we hired before ZipRecruiter.
Whether you're looking to fill one position or 20, find the best candidates with ZipRecruiter, where your job is just one click away from 100+ job sites. ZipRecruiter, the fastest way to hire. And right now you can try ZipRecruiter free. Just go to ZipRecruiter.com/ABC Radio. That's ZipRecruiter.com/ABC Radio. ZipRecruiter.com/ABC Radio.
Is a crackdown on illegal immigrants making America safer?
The numbers show dangerous criminals are not the bulk of those rounded up to be deported. ICE officials confirm about half the immigrants arrested in the early days of the Trump administration were not major offenders. They either had no criminal convictions or were traffic offenders, including many drunk drivers. The numbers first reported by the Washington Post show out of 675 immigrants arrested by ICE in February, less than a quarter were major criminal offenders. Only 2 were convicted of homicide. Mona Rivera, ABC News.
This is the 25th anniversary of a bleak chapter in L.A. history. Riots erupted after 4 white LAPD officers were acquitted in the beating of Rodney King. Then in South Central L.A., innocent drivers became victims of the outrage.
As chaos unfolded through much of L.A., the world looked on as truck driver Reginald Denny was beaten unconscious on live TV.
This is attempted murder.
Charles Parsons was in charge of the FBI's L.A. office in 1992. Now retired, he tells us about leading the team that arrested the men responsible, members of the gang 8 Trey Crips.
Everyone at that intersection that was responsible in the beating of Reginald Denny, there were 4 people charged, were 8 Trey Crips or their close associates.
During the riots, over 50 people died. Alex Stone, ABC News, Los Angeles.
This is ABC News.
5 times more hires are made through Indeed.com than any other job site, according to independent research. Imagine a lottery that had 5 times more winners, or a Sunday with 5 times more touchdowns. When you're hiring, it makes 5 times more sense to use Indeed. Right now, we're giving new users a $50 credit to post a sponsored job on the world's #1 job site. Claim your $50 credit at Indeed.com/credit. Terms, conditions, and quality standards apply.
Daria Albinger, ABC News.
From the KMET Weather Center for Beaumont and the Pass area, we'll kick off the weekend with a wind advisory in effect through 2 o'clock this afternoon. It'll be sunny with a high of 76 as winds gust to 40 miles an hour. Tonight, it'll be clear with a low of 55 with high winds to 20 miles an hour. Sunday should be sunny, our high 82 with winds to 25 miles an hour. For Redlands, we have a high wind warning in effect through 2 o'clock. It'll be sunny with a high of 84 with winds to 35 miles an hour. For Palm Springs, it'll be sunny with a high of 88 with winds to 30 miles an hour. I'm Rod Tanner for Smart Talk 1490 KMET.
The Banning Beaumont Cherry Valley Tea Party meets every Tuesday morning at 8 a.m. for informal breakfast and discussion. And they meet each month on the second Thursday at 5 p.m., all at the Farms House Restaurant in Banning. Listen to interesting speakers, learn about our Constitution with our free classes, enjoy friendly discussions, and informal dining. Come join us. For more information, call Glenn Stoll, 951-316-3843.
The following is a paid program. Views and claims expressed are those of the program producer and are not endorsed by this station. Opinions expressed are not necessarily those of radio station KMET, its management, employees, or affiliates.
Welcome. It is time for Constitution Radio with Douglas V. Gibbs right here on KMET 1490 AM. It's a pleasure to have you. I was talking to a listener at Thursday night's Constitution class in Temecula. For those of you who don't come to the class, every Thursday except for the second Thursday of each month, Faith Armory, 41669 Winchester Road in Temecula, 6:30 p.m. Constitution class. It's a free class with but I do pass around a donation bucket in case you want help with gas, something like that. But we're working our way through the Constitution. We are at Article 1, Section 8. No, I'm sorry, Article 1, Section 10, prohibitions to the states next Thursday. And he says to me, wow, your radio program is really good. And he's really impressed with what we're doing here. I was jazzed to hear it. And it's been ever since we went to 2 hours that the show has really been kicked up a notch. As for the plea for funding to help out with keeping that second hour, the listeners came through. The show is full funded thanks to the listeners and our advertisers, AllStar Collision, Wholesale Capital Corporation, and Constitution Quest Game. All three of those guys, they fund the first hour, and then the second hour was completely funded by listeners during this contract. And we did reach our goal. So when we get to the second hour at 2:05 or so, 2:06, it will be commercial free. The commercials during the first hour, because those are the people who bring you that first hour. That second hour, completely listener funded. So we'll see how it goes in July when our next contract is on the horizon, and hopefully we get some advertisers back and help fund that second hour. But for the time being, that second hour is listener funded. Okay. As the snowflakes worsen their assault on anyone who disagrees with them with violence and revolutionary demands, it is becoming clearer and clearer that the heart and soul of America is at risk. How can we make America great again if the moral compass of our country is corrupt and violent? And in fact, while I was driving up to the station, I was thinking about all this. I was thinking about how important it is that the foundation of our system has a strict moral standard. Now, you may think, well, gosh, Doug, that's not that big of a deal. And actually it is. I mean, the framers of the United States Constitution recognize two truths. Number one, no matter how well designed a political system is to safeguard liberty, if the leaders are corrupt, the result will be a failed system. Number two, no matter how poorly designed the political system may be, if the leaders adhere to a strict moral standard, the system will be met with success. While the political system is important and needs to be structured in such a way that it protects us from tyranny, the foundation of it must be found through a moral standard, no corruption, a good base. The problem is human nature tends to be corrupted when an individual obtains power. What's that saying, Alex? Power corrupts, absolute power corrupts absolutely, right, Alex?
That was Lord Acton, and he said that all great men are evil.
All great men are evil. Well, and people tend to be corrupted by power. It's our human nature. Therefore, power needs to be divided as much as possible. The system needs to be well designed, and the people running the system need to be a moral and religious people. This is not to say that all religious people are moral and righteous. I mean, in Europe, the establishment of state religions in countries provided an example of how corrupt a government can be when guided by a good religious system in the hands of corrupt and immoral leadership. Therefore, the foundation of a good system must be a moral and righteous leadership with checks and balances against the corruption of power, and a people who remains informed, and a public who follows a strict moral standard. When you have all of those ingredients, you will have a successful society. You know, and I've been reading a book, and this is the second time I'm reading it, and I've really been going through it slowly because I'm deeply studying the book. And the name of the book is Cicero, The Life and Times of Rome's Greatest Politician by Anthony Everett. And something I read this morning fascinated me because when I talk about natural law, natural rights, and a good and moral system, and that I believe Christianity has been the standard of the foundation of our system that has made us this prosperous, I have also reminded people that it doesn't matter what it's called, as long as you have a good moral belief system that's the foundation, you're going to last a while. And so I'm reading this book, and it's talking about how I'm about a little bit past midway, and talk about how Cicero, began writing when his political influence began to decline. He began to try to influence the system more through his written word. He began to write books. Now, back then, the books weren't like books today. They were long as sometimes 30 feet of a scroll, basically. And they are handwritten, and so they're copied by hand and so on and so forth. But he basically says in what he was writing that it was that Cicero believed that to make Rome great again, there was no more required than a return to tried and tested traditions. Quote, when we inherited the Republic from our forebears, it was like a beautiful painting whose colors were fading with age. We have failed to restore its original colors and have not taken the trouble to preserve its overall composition or even its general features. He then later wrote to a guy named Quintus, the ideal constitution and the ideal citizen are those who hold a moral standard. He recognized there are three basic forms of government: monarchy, aristocracy, and democracy. And what Rome had was a mixed constitution that took elements from all three and made it a republic. And he wrote of this, a moderate and well-balanced form of government, which is a combination of the three simple good forms, is preferable even to monarchy. Then he evoked the republic in its primitive, pure, and thoroughly oligarchical form, explaining that it was an equal part of all. Cicero's political thinking, liberal, and then when I say the term liberal, as this writer means it, the term liberal meant different than it does today. Liberal, though not democratic, had a great influence on the development of European political thought. It retained its appeal for centuries. It took no account of the political significance of the business class, nor did it see the coming military force of Caesar. So, and then I want to continue here because I'm tying this into something. So bear with me here. What Cicero began to write about, though, is what he had been noticing. What had been destroying their system was this: there had been a decline in moral standards and a corruption of old habits of responsibility in public life. All would be well if only there was a return to traditional values, a rediscovery of the ideal statesman and citizen. The Constitution itself, properly interpreted, was perfect. Now, does that sound kind of familiar, Alex? Does that sound like something like we're kind of wrestling with today? That we are wrestling with a political class that does not believe in natural law, which is the notion that and the belief that everything is just everything. Oh, what's the right word? Natural function of right conduct is inherent to a virtuous people, but wrongdoing is inherent to a people who do not follow natural law. Natural law being the law given by God, or a moral law. Law being the highest reason, as Cicero wrote, implanted in nature, which commands what ought to be done and forbids the opposite. That's natural law. And we've turned our back on it. And I believe it's the same as what Cicero was writing. We have abandoned our moral compass. We don't have a moral society anymore. Instead, we have out there, we have a bunch of snowflakes acting in a manner that's the opposite. I mean, I feel like walking up to these idiots out there with the violent protests and saying, what would your mother or God say about your activity? Is this a moral activity to be acting the way they are, violent and demanding that they get their way, or at least in a participation trophy? And and we're experiencing this worldwide insanity that's kind of, to me, ties into this whole lack of moral compass in our world. I mean, we got North Korea's Kim Jong-un, the dictator. He keeps suffering from a projectile dysfunction. We have an American just recently detained by North Korea. Another missile test, of course, the missile test failed. We have, our aircraft carrier warship is the Carl Vinson is right there on their coast practically. We got the United Nations making Saudi Arabia a member of the Women's Rights Council. We've got protesters violent in France because Marine Le Pen was one of the winners in the recent election, and they're acting violently because of that, because she dares to say that they need to start curbing the influx of Muslim refugees as Muslim terrorists terrorize France. We have we have protests in Brazil right now because of a call for austerity, because it's fallen apart, and the Venezuela government and Venezuela practically back to the Stone Ages, because they have abandoned their moral compass and a political system that limits the corruption of a corruptible leadership. All right, go ahead, Alex.
Yeah, the protesters in France apparently missed Hillary Clinton. There is something apparently inherently wonderful about a female leader, and yet Le Pen is demonized and hated and protested against.
Well, yeah, I mean, the Democrats have always called for, shattering the glass ceiling, like they, were with Hillary. But when Sarah Palin was chosen as a vice presidential candidate, they went nuts. How horrible! Yeah. Well, because they don't want a woman; they want a woman that fits their ideology.
Yeah, Maher called her a horrible name and was never taken to task for it. I've got a problem in that I live in a state that is definitely blue according to today's color. I call it red. And that is that so many of the people that I have been friends with for decades are rabid liberals. And I can't talk to them anymore because they flat will not look at the evidence. They will not listen. All it does is make them angry. I don't blame them. I don't have a hatred or even much of an anger in my heart, because I know they've been systematically brainwashed. The people whose fault that is the American citizens who have let these clowns, these
well, they're not even willing to listen to two words out of your mouth. Whatever happened to the adherence to Voltaire's quote, where Voltaire said, "I don't agree with what you believe, but I will defend your right to say it to the ends." I mean, what happened to that idea?
These people have been brainwashed into an unearned presumption of moral rectitude, which enables them to be both patronizing and condescending. Before you even talk to them, they know they're right because they're liberals and they're progressive, and you're.
Well, what that is that's a moral supremacy. And, we all have a certain moral supremacy. We believe our morals are the supreme morals. But what I mean by moral supremacy is I mean to the point where it's a supremacy that can only be allowed to exist and anything else must be destroyed kind of attitude, kind of like Islam does. So that's part of the reason why the liberal left and Islam gets along so well. The basic structure of who they are is the same. It's a totalitarian global domination. I'm right, you're wrong. My religion, it must be superior, and all else must be silenced kind of thinking.
Well, Eric Fromm wrote a book called Escape from Freedom.
Mm-hmm.
And what he's saying, I believe, having read it a long time ago, but the idea is that there's part of a human being that absolutely craves freedom.
Right.
But that's only part of us. There's another part of us that want to be assured and controlled and all that kind of thing. And so you get the people who are spiritually weak. They succumb to this majority rule on moral issues quite readily. And
well, it's easier to be a subject than to be an informed and active citizen of a system of liberty.
Well, Fromm says it's because there is no responsibility.
Right.
If you're a free college student and there aren't any constraints on you, you can either support the Vietnam War or you can protest against it. But you have to make a choice, and you have to be responsible for that choice. If you're in a totalitarian system, you don't have to choose anything. It's chosen for you, and you're not responsible. There's a lot of attraction to that for a lot of people.
Well, let's go to break, and I feel bad because Dennis didn't get a chance to weigh in on this, so we'll bring him on after the break to give us his point of view. So, Alex, or Dennis, you have time to think about what you want to say. Alex, thanks for your input, and audience. There's much more to come because you know what the left is doing right now? They're not only screaming and crying and demanding that you agree with them or be punished, but they are also trying to erase history so that you don't even know that anyone who agreed with you or disagreed with them ever existed. When we return.
You got a dent in your door, a scratch in your fender, or a scratch in your door and a dent in your fender. If you need auto detailing, if you need fire shooting decals on the side of your car, if you need a rally stripe right down the middle of your hardtop, I don't care what it is. The Patriots at AllStar Collision are the place you want to go. They're the only place to go. 522 Railroad Street in Corona. Web address allstarci.com to see all that they do and what they're all about. Phone number 951-279-9161. AllStar Collision, the kings of wreck and roll.
Hi, this is Ed Hoffman, President Wholesale Capital Corporation, your direct mortgage lender. Real estate prices are still low, which means now's the time to buy your next home before they go up. Whether it's a home to live in, a vacation house, or an investment property, we can meet your mortgage financing needs to help you realize the next phase of your American dream. At Wholesale Capital Corporation, we make sure you get a loan that you can afford with terms that work for you. Wholesale Capital welcomes FHA buyers, conventional buyers, jumbo loan buyers, and we proudly help the U.S. military veterans take advantage of the zero down payment VA loan program. Nobody treats veterans better than Wholesale Capital Corporation. Seniors, if you're interested in creating an additional stream of income or just making your mortgage payment go away with a reverse mortgage, Wholesale Capital would love to help you. To speak with a loan officer who has your best interests in mind, call Wholesale Capital at 855-640-2020. That's area code 855-640-2020. Wholesale Capital Corporation, where we can close.
What's your constitutional IQ? Your quest to learn the Constitution can be fun for the whole family. Learn about the Constitution as you play the Constitution Quest board game. Learn more at constitutionquest.com. Welcome back, Constitution Radio with Douglas V. Gibbs, right here on KMET 1490 AM. Tomorrow, the 30th of April, April 30th, the Unite Inland Empire Conservative Conference, 4th annual. It's going on at the Riverside Convention Center. It is too late for you to get tickets. You needed to get tickets by Friday, yesterday, at 4 o'clock in order to go online. So you will not be able to purchase tickets by walking up. Sorry you're going to miss it. I would love to see you there. We'll see you next year. But those of you who did get tickets and you're listening to this program, find my vendor table. I will have a table there with things to give away and brochures and selling my books and all that jazz, and I would love to see you. So we'll see you tomorrow. The event starts at 11:30. General admission check-in is 12:45. That's the earliest you can check in with a general admission ticket. And if you have a VIP, you can get in there much earlier than that. Now, that all said, Dennis, now that you're in a location where I think you'll be easier to understand and be able to really thoughtfully think out what we've been talking about, I am suggesting that while the political system itself and how it is designed is a very important thing, none of that matters if the leadership and the people are corrupt. That there needs to be a moral foundation of any system if it is going to survive and prosper. Your thoughts?
Well, that's true. I know the comments you were making about Cicero and trying to get back to the glory of Rome with the Republic. But Cicero, like our founding fathers, were experts through their own history, their own experience of the various types of governments, far more than the supposedly smart people in our country today that really don't even understand the beauty of the government that the founders gave them. But it does help to have the right framework. You're correct. A righteous guy can lead a country to prosperity, even if the government itself, whether it be a monarchy or whatever. But that's the leaders aren't right. It doesn't matter what you've got. I mean, I think of athletic analogies a lot. And you could give a guy who's an excellent ball player a crummy glove, and you can give a guy who's a crummy ball player a brand new glove or a great glove. And who would you rather have on the field? I'd rather have the guy, with the crummy glove, because he has the ability. And what we're getting is the worst of both. We're taking a good government and warping it by passing unconstitutional laws to where it doesn't exist the way it should. And then the type of people that do that are not good politicians, just like that not good ball player. So now you got crummy people making a crummier type of government, and we the people just have to sort that out and rise up and kind of like you were referring to Cicero, reconnect to that which was correct and fix that which is broken due to lack of understanding or intentional disregard.
Well, and that's, I think, a large part of where the wisdom of the Tytler cycle in history came from. Because if you go back to the Tytler cycle, Alexander Tytler, the Scottish political philosopher from the late 1700s or early 1800s, and he created this cycle in history to explain what happens with systems of liberty or just systems, political systems in general. And he says that they all begin in bondage, and the only way to get out of bondage first is through spiritual faith. Once there is spiritual faith, then there is courage, and from that courage is created liberty, and out of that liberty, abundance. But once that cycle gets to abundance, then that's when human nature starts to step in, and the corruption starts to step in, and the society and the political establishment becomes selfish, and then the people become complacent and apathetic, and finally it all returns to dependency and ultimately back to the bondage that they began in. And if they're going to pull out of that bondage, once again, it's going to take a spiritual faith, a moral standard, a non-corrupt people and leadership in order to get that cycle back towards courage, liberty, and abundance. Now, when we think about all of this, it also makes a lot of sense because when it seems to be in our human nature not to care about our moral standards or God when things are going great. How many people, Christians, all you Christians out there, are you listening? How often do you pray when it's going well, and how often do you pray when you're really in a tight spot? We tend to do that. That is in our nature. And so I fear that we may not reach out for that that spiritual faith, that moral grounding until we're at the bottom of the barrel and all things have gotten pretty bad. Now, they got pretty bad with the last president, and so in comes President Trump, and he's a lot better than what we had. Now, whether or not he is the great president or the perfect president, time will tell. There's a lot of people who doubt certain things about him, but so far so good. But is it enough? Are we headed back towards spiritual faith on that Tytler cycle? Or are we just in a slight little pit stop off of the path between dependency and bondage? Alex, what do you think about what we're saying here? I mean, is this an inevitable collapse if we don't get our moral butts in gear, so to speak, Alex?
Absolutely. Government, without the ISIS and North Korea and Russia and all the other competing enemies that we have threatening our existence, we have the fact that government, by nature, gathers to itself more power. That's what it's all about. That's why it's there, as far as it's concerned. Now, as far as we're concerned, it's simply a tool to help us live our lives. But invariably, the governments come to think of themselves as the rulers, and they want more money, and they want just exactly that. They want more of everything. And
the thing is, but a failed system can't give more. A failed system gives less. I mean, once again, let's go back to Brazil. What's going on in Brazil right now? There's not enough funding. So they're having to pull back. They're going into an austerity thing like they did in Venezuela, like they did in Greece, and the people are rioting. Why are you taking away our gifts from the Treasury for? Because there's no more money in the Treasury.
Please don't fall back on logic. These people are not logical. They resent logic. They consider it a bourgeois white man tool. It's not going to. My problem with all the years I've spent fighting this situation is that I do it on an intellectual basis, and these people are reached on a gut level.
Well, you got to remember too, they are in the midst of an addiction. They have been addicted to a poison. But they're not willing to recognize that it's poison because they're addicted to it. And so they're going to defend it as much as they can. Just like the crack addict defends their addiction. They're so addicted, they're willing to defend it. It's like the marijuana lobby out there. Same thing. There's a willingness to defend their position because the addiction is that great when it comes to tyrannical thinking.
I have talked to relatives who are extreme leftists, and a couple of them have been brave enough and honest enough to say, look, being a progressive is part of my self-image, and my self-image isn't that damn strong. If you challenge my progressivism, if you destroy my belief in my political position, you're gonna threaten my self-image and my feeling of well-being in life. I think there's a lot of that, a lot of truth to that.
Well, you know the difference between a puppy and a liberal, right?
The puppy has his eyes open.
Puppy stops whining after it grows up.
Oh, okay.
All right. Okay. Now, you know what? I'm going to have to now send Sean. So whenever I do one of those, I'm going to have to send him the rim shot audio.
Oh, yes.
My wife
All
says
right,
I should.
Dennis? All right. So we're talking about Alexander Tytler's Tytler cycle and a moral foundation for a system. And so here's the question. Is America in her death throes right now, or did we stave off the new revolution by electing Donald J. Trump into the presidency?
Well, I believe the election of President Trump would not have been done in the death throes. I mean, I agree that had he not been elected, it would have been another great nail, in our coffin after all the ones that Obama, put in there. So I think it is an uptick. It's a reawakening. It's maybe an increase of faith. But President Trump needs to not allow things to be watered down, which means we still need to maintain our efforts. He's backpedaled some on immigration. He's being a little softer on the wall. I know he's trying to work with the Republicans in Congress that he has. Obviously he'd like to be going faster than them. Paul Ryan and the boys, they need to get their act together and get the agenda going. The 100-day marker is, it's a traditional marker. I mean, he can gain momentum and still be in pretty good shape, for the midterm elections. But it is an uptick. But the GOP needs to stand up here and take advantage of the opportunity because they've got all three. They got the Senate and the House and the White House. And if they don't squander that, then they won't have as good a story to tell, and therefore the opposition party will have a better story to tell, that they can't govern, they aren't organized, the improvement that we expect to get we don't get because we don't enact it soon enough to get the results soon enough so people can see it before the election. So, yeah, we need to get cooking now. We need to get going, and I would hope it is an uptick. I'll throw out one other comment that I'll paraphrase, but we have learned that, sadly, the disposition of most men, when they get authority, they generally have a tendency to exercise it unrighteously. And that goes back with your statement about, power and absolute and corruption and then absolute corruption. And it goes, again, back to human nature. So you need to have, going back to your other point, a moral leader that when he has that power, such as George Washington, he was able to surrender it. He was able to go back and return to, where he came from, his roots, and not have it fester inside him to where he turns into something other than what he initially started out.
Well, and part of the thing about this generation of the people coming up, for me, education is a big deal. I remember when I was a kid, I played baseball, and my dad says to me, to practice, so I can become a better baseball player. And so I started saying, well, practice makes perfect. And he said, no, that's not true. And I said, well, you just said I need to practice. He says, yeah, but if you're not practicing the right habits, you're not going to become a better baseball player. So perfect practice makes perfect. You got to be practicing the right things. You have to be educated with the right habits as a baseball player in order for you to improve as a baseball player with practice and with playing. And so the problem with our society is not that they don't have any sense or they've been practicing the wrong habits. In other words, it's not that our American public is uneducated. The problem is that they are educated, but they're educated just enough to believe what they've been taught, but not educated enough to question what they've been taught. And what good is a society that demands that we all become a collective society and we all just work together and essentially beat their swords into plowshares when those people wind up becoming subjects of the people who kept their swords? And that's what's happening. So when we return, boy, I tell you what, the show's going fast today. Have you noticed that? I mean, we are just blazing such good things to talk about here. When we return, I will talk about how they are trying to erase history and what the liberal left's penalty is for dissent after this break. Help me fight the good fight. This radio program is funded by advertising dollars. So, if you are a business, add Constitution Radio with Douglas V. Gibbs to your business portfolio. If you are a listener, become a patron of the businesses advertising on this program. Without advertising, your weekend dose of truth ends. With more advertising, Constitution Radio with Douglas V. Gibbs grows, and we will be on the way to win the battle to restore the Republic. To learn more, email us at constitutionspeaker@yahoo.com or visit douglasvgibbs.com.
Hi, this is Ed Hoffman, President, Wholesale Capital Corporation, your direct mortgage lender. Real estate prices are still low, which means now's the time to buy your next home before they go up. Whether it's a home to live in, a vacation house, or an investment property, we can meet your mortgage financing needs to help you realize the next phase of your American dream. At Wholesale Capital Corporation, we make sure you get a loan that you can afford with terms that work for you. Wholesale Capital welcomes FHA buyers, conventional buyers, jumbo loan buyers, and we proudly help the U.S. military veterans take advantage of the zero down payment VA loan program. Nobody treats veterans better than Wholesale Capital Corporation. Seniors, if you're interested in creating an additional stream of income or just making your mortgage payment go away with a reverse mortgage, Wholesale Capital would love to help you. To speak with a loan officer who has your best interests in mind, call Wholesale Capital at 855-640-2020. That's area code 855-640-2020. Wholesale Capital Corporation, where we can close.
The true patriots of AllStar Collision have been proudly serving the Inland Empire for over 20 years. Built on honesty, integrity, quality, and old-fashioned customer service, we offer lifetime warranties for our work, and every vehicle serviced by AllStar Collision is washed, detailed, the headlights polished, fluids are checked and topped off, safety checked, and returned in showroom condition. We offer free estimates, are approved by major insurance companies, and accept all claims for all cars and trucks. We use computerized frame straightening to factory specifications, offer fiberglass body repair and paint, free local pickup and delivery, and after-hours towing. Mention this radio program at drop-off and receive $100 off or a free rental car for up to 5 days during your repair. Visit us at allstarci.com or at 522 Railroad Street in Corona. Call us at 951-279-9161. We are the kings of wreck and roll.
Ladies and gentlemen, children of all ages, welcome back to Constitution Radio with Douglas V. Gibbs right here on KMET 1490 AM. If you want to listen online, KMET1490am.com. Download the phone app, the KMET phone app. You can make your smartphone smarter. And 1 week from today, not only will there be another Constitution Radio program right here on KMET, but then in the evening at 5 o'clock will be the Constitution Association monthly dinner. And this is held at Myrna's Cafe at 26850 Cherry Hills Boulevard in Memphis, and our speaker will be one John L. Hancock. John Hancock has an incredible, absolutely incredible presentation called The Distortion of History, and I want you all there. There is no tickets. There are no tickets available because it is free. Just show up. We do ask that you buy dinner. Definitely give your patronage to the restaurant, who gives us the use of their banquet room at no charge. So we ask that everybody buy dinner. 5 o'clock, Saturday, May 6th, ConstitutionAssociation.com, Constitution Association monthly dinner. John Hancock is a speaker, Distortion of History. All right, now, do you remember when the Islamists, I don't remember if it was ISIS or it was a Muslim Brotherhood, I think it was the Muslim Brotherhood, had issued a fatwa to destroy the Great Pyramids. And when we heard about that, we were appalled. Well, they said it was because the pharaohs represented something that offended them, something that was contrary to their belief system. But we stood in favor of protecting the historical artifacts, citing the historical significance of the pyramids, and besides, those who forget the past are doomed to repeat it. In America, the snowflake liberal left easily offended generation is as nuts as the Islamists. Why? I'm not in favor of racism. I see the history of slavery in the United States as among our great sins, and recognize that slavery and the Confederacy were tools of the Democrats, not the GOP. I also recognize the importance of preserving the history of the South's heritage. As I said already, those who forget the past are doomed to repeat it. In New Orleans, as we've been seeing throughout the South, local authorities are purging its public space of Civil War era memorials that some say are historically significant and others dismiss as offensive relics of white supremacy. So they seek to erase history. In New Orleans, a marble monument celebrating the 1874 uprising of a white supremacist militia against Louisiana's Reconstruction state government was removed. The city also plans to remove statues of 3 Confederate leaders, Robert E. Lee, Jefferson Davis, and PGT Beauregard, after months of vigorous protest from historical preservation and Confederate groups who say the city is sanitizing its history. The Stone Mountain Confederate Memorial in Georgia, a vast carving of Jefferson Davis, Robert E. Lee, and Thomas J. Stonewall Jackson on horseback, is the largest and most epic memorial to the Confederacy. The entire carved surface is larger than a football field. I visited the site in 2002. It's pretty impressive. Yes, there were a bunch of pickup trucks driving around the area flying Confederate flags, such as Life in the South, I suppose. But while the park's memorial status is protected by Georgia law, the carving came under attack in 2015 when a Georgia NAACP leader called for the sculpture to be sandblasted, and the Atlanta City Council passed a resolution asking Governor Nathan Deal to appoint a study group to consider adding other significant figures, such as Reverend Martin Luther King Jr. and former President Jimmy Carter. The South is full of hundreds of Confederacy reminders, a sign of heritage, not hate, argue some. The statue of Nathan Bedford Forrest, a Confederate lieutenant general and reported early leader of the Ku Klux Klan in Tennessee, has been vandalized with Black Lives Matter scrawled all over the marble in red spray paint. In 2015, the Memphis City Council voted to remove that statue, along with the remains of Forrest and his wife. That's right, we're even going to dig up their graves and get rid of them. The city was thwarted by a Tennessee law that prevents the cities and counties from relocating or otherwise disturbing war memorials on public properties. Last October, the Tennessee Historical Commission denied the City Council's application for a waiver that would let it relocate the monument. Looking back throughout history, we notice that free societies do not destroy the past. They seek to learn from it. Tyrannies destroy the past and knowledge, claiming that it is offensive, when in reality they are working to hide the things that may reveal to the public who they really are. What's next? Are they going to decide that our founding fathers were not acceptable either and demand that the Washington or Jefferson memorials be torn down?
They will.
Then will the war on free speech depart from the universities and become law? Will being a constitutionalist become a federal offense? All right, after saying all this, I wanted to go to you first, Alex, because you're the commie hunter, and you have studied what communist countries have done when it comes to their history, their past, and those who are educated. Pol Pot comes to mind.
One needs only to read the novel 1984 by George Orwell to see the culmination of this kind of thinking.
Right.
His job was to sit in the propaganda ministry and erase history. We've seen that actually happen in the Soviet Union and other communist countries, where they will airbrush a person. A person becomes a non-person,
right?
And they are airbrushed out of pictures. There'll be 12 people in this group photo from the revolution, and suddenly there's only 10 people or 8 people. You're not allowed to mention their name. If you do, you'll suffer the same fate. It's a typical totalitarian device, and that's what we're running into is totalitarian.
So, Dennis, we have in the South a history being erased, the Confederacy being erased. Now, I'm not necessarily one that would personally fly the Confederate battle flag on, in my pickup truck or wear a Confederate soldier's cap out at Walmart tomorrow, but I do own those items because of their historical significance. How dangerous do you think it is, Dennis, for us to stomach the erasure of history, be it Confederate or any other kind of history, by the liberal left loonies?
Well, obviously they've got their agenda. Like you say, they don't want the competition. They don't want the memory. I mean, you can go all the way back to if Cecil B. DeMille was correct in his making of the Ten Commandments, that when Moses was thrown out as one of the princes, the Pharaoh made the comment, erase his name, from everything, his image, like he never existed. And that's what they're trying to do now. The old adage that if you don't learn from history, you repeat it. I think applies here. Now, I think it's strange the things that the media and politicians want to honor. I was at a meeting this morning that Senator Wynn, from the California Senate, she had that opportunity to speak a month or so back, and she was silenced. You're familiar with the story, right?
Mm-hmm.
Well, they were honoring, I guess, Tom Hayden and some others and communism and all of that. And, of course, she was from Vietnam, so she wanted to make sure that, she
this
went
is
on record and
Senator or Assemblywoman Wynn
right.
from, like Huntington Beach or something like that, didn't she?
Yeah, so she was polite. She didn't say anything the day that Hayden's family was there, and they were honoring him. But she had these thoughts prepared, really for over a month or several months because, she was raised in Vietnam. She left when she was 5 years old, came to the States.
She knew the evils of communism.
Well, her uncle and father were members of the South Vietnamese army. The uncle was executed. The mother was thrown in jail because the father defected. I mean, she's got a history, but she gets up to make a comment about her history, about her status as a refugee, of her gratitude for coming to this country, not knowing the language, and then 30, 40 years later, now being in Sacramento, in a building that should be honoring the people and freedom of speech, and they shut her mic off.
Right, they shut her mic off.
Escorted her out of the building.
Escorted her out of the building.
She was an elected official. It's not like you and me were in there trying to, do anything. I mean, it's her job, and she left her cell phone when they escorted her out of her desk.
Kevin Leon, they call him De Leon, but I think the De got added to make him sound more Mexican.
Yeah.
Kevin Leon not only had her escorted out, but he was adamant about it. He was the one who ordered her mic off. He was the one had her escorted out, and he's the one that's pushing the sanctuary state status.
Well, and she told them ahead of time what her comments were going to be, so they knew it. And
we said she was out of order, though. Hey, you're out of order.
That's exactly right. And the sergeant at arms wouldn't let her go back to get her cell phone. They escorted her to her office like she was under house arrest. So here she is trying to remind people of the history that was her history 30 years before, her family history. People died. People came to America. They discovered, freedom, and her right to speak, was taken. And regrettably, the totalitarians, they aren't going to settle with our right to speak. They're trying to stop us from speaking now because they want to win the election and the battle. But once they win the election and we no longer have the ability to speak anymore, they will then take us out. That's just what happens in godless societies. They take the intelligent, they take whoever might be a threat to them, and you're gone. And the liberals that are supporting these guys that think they're politically correct and they're warm and fuzzy and they want to be welcoming do not understand the Trojan horse of their own demise that is coming right to them with their assistance. And to me, that's the challenge that we have in this country today, is not to rally the troops that are already on our side, but to be effective in opening the eyes of those that are the grassroots of the opposition to truly see what's at risk here. And the conservatives, much like you were saying, Voltaire, we would die to protect the right of our enemies to speak, but our enemies would kill us, to stop us from speaking. And that is the great trade-off.
They're following Karl Marx. Karl Marx, father of communism. Karl Marx's quote, "The meaning of peace is the absence of opposition to socialism."
Getting back to the original question for this segment, in terms of erasing images and symbols, our belief, when I was there in the time of the civil rights movement and such, and the belief was that we were working toward equality. Basically, that's what we wanted, was equality for people of color. And now we have achieved that. There's tons of laws on the books. You go anywhere and you find
Eichmann was president of the United States for 8 years, for God's sakes.
There you go. So what they're doing now is they're saying, okay, we've gone that far. Now it's time. We're not for equality. We're for superiority. We're for dominance of people of color over whites. And so we have classes in universities now where whites are required to fill out papers explaining why they have privilege and their existence is an abomination.
And as a conservative, if you dare speak out against the liberal left on that, there is a penalty. And we're going to talk about those penalties after this break. Yes, we're going into a second hour, top of the hour break. Go get yourself a refill of your soda, your favorite dessert, and then come back and listen to the commercial-free second hour of Constitution Radio with Douglas V. Gibbs right here on KMET 1490 AM. Thanks for spending the first hour with us. We have one more hour to go. The liberal left's penalty for dissent is next.
The proceeding was a paid program. Views and claims expressed are those of the program producer.